Welcome back to another interview for Local Where To's podcast. I'm Lorraine, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Colette Leeson, an experienced career coach and organisational development consultant. With a background of over 30 years in HR and the public sector in Northern Ireland, she has a proven track record of helping people get their dream job. As the founder of Colette Leeson Interview and Career Coaching, she works with a diverse range of clients, from students to senior leaders, to help them gain clarity, build confidence, and secure fulfilling roles. Today, we'll talk to Colette about her journey, her client-focused approach, and how her work empowers individuals to take control of their professional destinies. Hi, Colette. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to start by you giving us a wee bit about your background and how you actually started in career development.
Thank you, and very nice to be here. My name is Colette Leeson. I'm a career and interview coach, and I started actually more than 30 years ago. Started in the civil service when I was 17. I came straight out of school, and my mum was, at the time, she was disgusted because I was supposed to be the first in the family going to university and stuff like that. So for me to end up giving careers advice is quite ironic. But I left school and went straight into the civil service. So went from one institution into another, where I spent the next 38 years of my life. But early on in my career, I applied for and got accepted to be a careers officer. I went to 𝗵𝗆 College for a year and did a postgraduate qualification in careers guidance, and came back and worked in the job centre in West Belfast. And in my early career, that was early 90s, I was a careers officer working in the local schools in West Belfast on the Falls and Shankill Road into North Belfast. And that really gave me a real grounding in working with people and seeing how you could empower people to actually grow and make a difference in life. Then moved on from that, and very long story short, to say, with all things, I was wanting to buy a house, get a mortgage, so went for other jobs, went into training development and had a really great time working as a training consultant, running courses for women and courses to support the devolved government. And then, I suppose, over the years, I ended up getting promotions, and that takes you further away from actually your purpose, takes you further away from what you enjoy. And I ended up running 𝑖Direct. I was program director for 𝑖Direct and worked in digital transformation in my latter years. But then there were a couple of things that happened with me that made me think, I'm making a living, but I'm not making a difference. And I suppose I got to a point in sort of about 10, 15 years ago, my mum came down with dementia, and that was one big thing that changed my view on life and what was important. And many people do have care and responsibilities, whether that's for children or parents or whatever. And during that period, I realised that actually I needed the space and time to be able to support my mum, but it was difficult to get that support and to keep doing the job or get that flexibility. So that was one big thing for me, and just to see, I suppose, to see what was important in life for me in terms of actually how I spent my time and what I wanted to support on. And so that was one big thing for me. And then my husband had a heart attack, which he is fully better from, but that was about 2.5, 3 years ago. And at that time, we both sat back and thought, no, there's more to life than this. So I stepped back and thought, well, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I don't want to just simply earn money. I want to be doing things that make a difference, both for me and for others. And when I look back and actually started to be my own life coach, I started to think, where was it I really made a difference and really enjoyed and was in line with my values? And that was careers coaching. That was supporting people. That was doing workshops. That was delivering workshops, doing one-to-one coaching. So at that point, I felt, right, that's what I need to get back into. And that's really why over the last 2.5 years, I started building the business. Last year, this time last year, I took a career break to actually start the business. And next Friday, which will be the 26th of September 2025, for those that are listening in at a later stage, I retire from the civil service. And this will be my full-time role for the rest of my career, for as long as that's going to be. So that's why I've ended up in what I've been doing.
I think you touched on some very important points there. First, Colette, it's that you don't have to go down the university path for all the younger listeners.
Absolutely.
If people are leaving school and they're at that, because I know whenever I left school, you don't have a clue what you want to do. You haven't lived to know what you want to do. Do you work with younger students as well, or do you go into schools and work with schools?
I haven't been, I did in my early career working schools and working schools a lot, as I say, in West and North Belfast. And what I tend to do now is it's parents contacting me and asking me to work one-to-one with their young people. So I think one of the things you touched on there, people not going to university or, not knowing what they want to do. There are a number of people actually now looking at things like apprenticeships and higher level apprenticeships because of the likes of the price and cost of student loans. And because of the fact that we're now in an age where with AI and with the pace of change, it's not going to be the same world where you do a degree and that's it, that's you finished, that's you go into your job for life and that's what happens. So I suppose one of the things is actually we are going to be lifelong learning. We are going to be pivoting careers throughout our lives because of the pace of change and the pace of technology. I am increasingly, and nearly every week, I have a parent contacting me actually to support them with work with their children, whether, as I say, that's post graduation and looking to get their first role, whether it's higher level apprenticeships or it's into their first job. So there's quite a lot of that. So no, my time hasn't been back in the schools as yet, but simply working with people that set off the now done with GCSEs or my A levels, what next?
What type of advice would you give those young students? Is it bad to take the year out and decide what you want to do? Does that look bad further on down on a CV? Or what advice would you typically give the younger students?
Yeah. Again, for the younger students, it's the same like anyone that takes a break, because a lot of the people I deal with are women returners who are coming back from a career break or from caring. So it's similar issue in that, is it going to look bad if I'm out? Is it going to look bad? But so many people jump in and do something and then feel, actually, I should do this because, and I suppose in many ways did that in my early life. As I say, I started into my A levels. I knew when I was starting my A levels, I didn't really want to be there. Your parents want you to be there, they want you to do. And so many of the people I work with now are people who trained as accountants, trained in law. I have a client who was a dentist, doesn't want to be a dentist anymore. And they made those career choices very early on. So actually, sometimes it's better to take the time out, be clear about what you want, certainly get work experience while you're out there, travel, but actually it's about when you then come to do your CV, it's about actually being able to describe that time in a way that supports you rather than actually seeing the gap as something to be ashamed of or or trying to hide it, which is even worse. It's about actually being in a position where you tell the story of how you used that time, what you learned, where you traveled, what you did, and what skills you gained. And that's, again, something that I work with women an awful lot is around how do I tell the story of my time out raising children? Because there's that fear of, I'm a parent, I'm a mum, will that go against me when I'm going for jobs? So it's a similar issue, but certainly it's about, no, if you still have issues about what you want to do, there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking time out, and actually it might clear things for you, but it's well worth getting it right.
Also, you touched on another thing, and you covered it there as well. We have to know what's important to us and what we like doing.
Absolutely. I think the bottom line is that when you're young, when I think back, I wanted to be a computer programmer when I was young. I was in the first year ever of O-level computers in Northern Ireland, believe it or not. That's how long ago that was. But I think for me, the key thing is that actually at those points, sometimes you don't know what you want to do. You think you know what you want to do, but our lives evolve. And I think that's one of the things that I see right now with the people I'm dealing with. It's what you wanted to be at 16 is not necessarily what's going to suit you at 26 or 36 or 46. And your values change, your needs change. Whenever you're young, it's maybe about getting the first job, being able to travel, go away with your friends, get your first house. But those needs change over time. And so it is about actually understanding what your values are, what's important to you, but also actually looking at whether it's what you want to make a difference. So subject choices come into it, but it's also around the where do you see yourself, what do you see yourself doing, and how best kind of career support you in that, alongside your balance in the rest of your life as well. Because again, that's something that over time changes depending on what road you take on.
And I think also it's very valuable as an outsider, you can probably draw more from what somebody's good at and what they like to do than somebody sitting there thinking, what am I actually good at? I think in a society, I know I would find you don't really know what you're good at. until somebody actually asks you those trigger questions. Okay, do you like doing this here? And then takes you down that path and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm actually good
Well,
at
100%, whether it's women, whether it's Northern Ireland people, whatever, we are very humble. We do not like boast about ourselves. We tend to feel that it's showing off, it's brash or whatever. So we underplay. And I think that's something that certainly with the coaching that I do, part of it is about picking out the gems, picking out stuff that maybe you just go, sure, I do that. That's just part of the job. That's how I do things. And when you shine the lens on yourself, you can't see it, or you certainly underplay it. But actually, when you talk to someone who can ask the questions to actually bring out, so what you're telling me, actually, you actually did X, Y, and Z. And then they go, yeah. And I go, well, that's really important because actually that means that you can demonstrate A, B, and C. So it's having someone that can actually have the conversation. I suppose I sometimes describe myself as I'm a champion, I'm a cheerleader, I'm a coach, I am a confidant, I'm a best friend, but I'm also a challenger. And it's all those skills. It depends what I need to take out of the toolkit, depending on who I'm working with. But it is that trend. At the end of the day, what I always say to clients is my role is to empower them so that they don't need me anymore. And when I know that they don't need me because they've got a job or they've actually got into a college course or whatever, and they don't need me at that point, that's my job done. That's my why, if you know what I mean, is that actually I've supported them and empowered them so that they can now move into the next chapter of their story. So that's what makes me get up in the morning.
It shows. You mentioned they're getting into a college course. So do you actually help people get into education and decide what college course they do as well?
Again, it depends on the client. Certainly, I would have young people who have come out of school, come out of college, and are looking to do things like, as I say, higher level apprenticeships and the Step It Up program from the further education colleges or whatever. So some people are looking to reskill. For young people coming through, certainly they would have careers officers in the school that would do quite a bit of that work with them. But sometimes, as I say, the parents will want to actually get advice on particular jobs and roles, or stuff like that. It really depends, but a lot of my clients are really people who have actually left the system and are starting to look at their first job or move on from their first job and considering what other training and development they need.
You offer the one-on-one,
Yeah,
much a number of your students contact you,
absolutely.
or mums going back to work and so on and so forth, but you also offer corporate services. So
Absolutely.
what does that entail and what's that look like?
Okay, so in terms of the three strands that I have, as I say, it's the one-to-one. I do private coaching, and generally speaking, that's one-to-one. I also offer workshops, and some of those I offer myself under my own banner, but some of them I'm working for organisations such as Timely Careers, which is part of the 𝗂𝗍𝗍 group, Women in Business Group. And through that, I would run programs on CV writing, interview skills, and things like LinkedIn, etc., and confidence building and resilience. And that's for women returners, generally speaking. I also have been more recently offering programs as part of the Centre of Learning Digital Returners course for women. And again, that's around, they offer an OCN in digital skills, and I support that by doing employability training over an 8-week period. So I'm working with those organisations to do that. In terms of corporates, i.e. an organisation come and say, Colette, I want you to come in. That can be anything around things like DEI. For example, an organisation may want to support some of their employees in terms of confidence, being able to get promotion, being able to actually sell their own story. So I do things like confidence build, interview skills coaching, interview skills workshops. And I also do CV writing, application form writing. So it's really supporting the employer to actually put in place mechanisms to help those in the organisation that want to develop in their careers. So again, it really depends. It will be a mix of coaching and workshops and one-to-one support.
Yeah, I think that's so important going into corporate and actually bringing people up the ranks instead of hiring at the top, because they know your business and it's so important to hold on to them, but yet and all see them grow.
Absolutely. And I think this is a massive piece at the minute, and one that I am shouting loud about from everywhere. But we are in such a period of change. We are in such a period of change where AI, every day you hear something else about AI. You're hearing about entry-level jobs are disappearing because of AI, etc., etc. So it's in the news. But actually, we have resources, and employers have resources, and they will be actually scaling their businesses and looking at how to shape their businesses to be able to work in new ways. A massive part of that is actually supporting their employees to be able to work in new ways, to be able to give them the confidence and the skills to actually apply for the new roles that are going to be created, and actually looking to see that, as I say, we also, in terms of demographics, there are less young people coming up, we have more older people coming. So it's actually looking about, well, how can we use the skills and experience to retrain people? I think for employers, if they really want to actually be competitive and create a competitive advantage, as well as looking at their systems and their processes and what they can cut and what they can be more efficient with and do differently, it's about looking holistically about, well, okay, what does that mean for my people? And how do I give them the confidence and skills? How give them the knowledge and skills to do things differently, but also support them in having the confidence to work in new ways, to apply for the new roles, to support them actually their first 100 days in the new roles. So that sort of stuff, I think, is going to be increasingly important, because especially as we get older, we're afraid to take on new things. So it's actually, once people know how to do it, they can quickly gain the skills, but it's being able to give them that support so that they can actually apply for the new roles that are going to be available.
We have the side of the employees and going for the interview and writing the CVs. Then do you actually help with people taking the interview?
Yes, absolutely. So again, if an employer is looking for interview skills training for their panels, make sure that not only are they following good practice from a equality legislation perspective, but they're consistently asking the questions, recording the interview answers, and having the right evidence to actually assess who gets the job. Yeah, that would be part of what I do as well. So again, I think it's critical that the panels actually, from the outset, from the actual job application stage, and understand what's involved in it, right through to the shortlisting process and into the interview, have the knowledge and skills to be able to do that. I think one of the things we're seeing at the minute is that so many candidates are now using AI to actually do their CVs, that actually the problem for recruiters comes from the fact that actually they've got so many vanilla CVs, so it's hard to actually shortlist out at that point. And so therefore it becomes more difficult, because you're going in the interview and you're having to see people. So it's actually working with employers at the outset to start thinking about, what is it you're trying to get here, and how do we best fit that in to the approach you're taking to the recruitment process, as well as then what do you need your panel members to be able to actually test and do? Is the interview the right way to do it? Should you be looking at a presentation or other ways of actually assessing? But how do we make sure your panel members are trained to be able to do it right? It cuts all ways.
A lot of interviews now, you just don't have one interview, you've got 3 or 4 interviews in various stages. You can work then with the employer, this is stage 1, this is general, this is what you need to find out. Then at each stage you can work out and try and pull as much information out of that person as possible and train them on how to do that. Yeah, that's very valuable, because a lot of people just don't know what questions to ask.
No. And again, it's more, is that sort of pace that you're working at, because you've got the questions, you agree the questions up front, but it's actually understand, well, what constitutes good evidence, and what actually are the right follow-up questions to be asking. And it's being in a place where you've got that thought through well before you ever hit an interview. And as a panel, you're comfortable and confident in how you're going to manage it, how you time it, how you deliver it, etc., so that each candidate gets the same process, the same opportunity, and that you're actually in a position where you're doing it in a way that's not about passing and failing. It's about actually giving the panel the ability to get the best evidence out of each candidate, so that they're making a decision based on a full consideration of the facts.
You touched on another important point as well, is that the CVs are now written by AI.
Yes.
Is there a way that we can actually read a CV and then know about the person? Because if we're looking at all these vanilla CVs, is there something that we can pull out, or is it no, you just have to meet the person?
I think the thing is that there is employer backlash. There is no doubt about it. That when they're seeing a CV that
Yeah.
clearly is written and it's just got all the buzzwords, the one in particular I hate is the word spearheaded. I don't know anybody that spearheads anything. It's the Americans sort of phrases. Sometimes you see the spelt in American and stuff like that. And there are people making a fortune fly by nights just actually helping people do those. The individual thinks it's perfect, but actually an employer can see that a mile off. Again, I think from an employer perspective, by the time it comes to them, it's nearly too late. I think one of the things is that in my work with whether it's women returners, whether it's people coming from school, whether it's a one-to-one candidate, is really to say, look, AI is really your co-pilot. It is really something to support you,
Yeah.
but you should not. And my thing is, it's to put in an AI-based CV is actually the worst thing that you can do. Your story needs to be in there. They need to see that hook. Who am I? Why am I interested? What have I done? Not just a list of skills and a list of things, but really, what have I done and what have I achieved? And what specific results have I got? What percentages? What have I gone? What did I win an award for this? It has to be you. Yes, AI can
Yeah.
help you with the what's the word, punctuation and maybe making it a bit sharper. And there are tools like CV360 that you can put it through to make sure that you've hit all the phrases that would be picked up, because a lot of employers on the other side of the house, and I should have said that as well, once employers will get these, sometimes it's not the employer that's reading it, and they will put it through AI as
Oh,
well.
really?
The statistics are that for a CV, even if you're reading it as an employer, you'll scan it in about 8 seconds. And that will give you the determination of whether the person is fit to bring in for interview and you want to see them. But there are things called applicant tracking systems, which allow an employer for a competition to actually take the CV, get the applicant tracking system to review the CV and say in a couple of seconds whether they've hit the criteria you've put in your job description. So in some cases, it's not even a person reading that CV. So that's the thing. I think for employers, they need to actually have something alongside the applicant tracking system to be able to determine whether the people in those CVs actually have not just ticked boxes, but they can actually see what they've achieved. So there's some sense of if you abdicate it all to a system, at the end of the day, you're going to get systems writing it and systems marking it. The people need to be there. My thing with candidates is get your story in there. This has to be about you. This is your calling card. This is the first thing the employer will see. So you need to be in there. And yes, certainly use AI to help you just make sure you've ticked everything off, you haven't missed something, but you're the central character in this story. So you have to be in there. But with employers, my story is if you make this too mechanical and you rely too much
Yeah.
on the AI to mark, that you're going to end up actually having to interview more people anyway, because
Yeah.
actually you'll end up getting the tick box stuff. We're in danger of actually CVs being rendered sort of a bit obsolete because they won't actually help in the process. And I think that's certainly something that the employers are starting to think about.
How do they get applicants in? What are you seeing people do?
Well, certainly I think CVs will still be part of the
Uh-huh.
process. I think, as you were saying, they're having that initial, maybe having an initial stage
Mhm.
where actually you do more of a shorter, more generic, and maybe the recruitment company does that for you if you're using a recruitment company, and then they weed out some of the ones that clearly won't be capable of meeting it, and then that allows you then to see the ones then that look more that they actually do meet the requirements and they've shown that in the first interview. So it's probably meaning more interviews. But as I say, the first one is really just to get a sense of the who are you, how do you fit, what have you done, why are you interested, so that you can actually get a sense of who the real person is.
A lot of people are still using recruiters.
Yeah, well, certainly in terms of both for candidates and for employers, things like LinkedIn is always going to be a big source. The job boards, so things like NI Jobs and Indeed and stuff like that
Mhm.
are all being used. And then you've got the recruiters like Manraf and Staffline and MCS and stuff like that. So again, I think the candidates that I'm dealing with will actually look at, and I'd certainly be telling them to look at a range of methods. It's getting the CV ready, but the biggest thing that I tell them not to do is fire their CV to everybody, to actually build relationships with a recruiter or a couple of recruiters and actually build those relationships so that they can actually act on their behalf. Because when you know someone, And you're a recruiter, it's easier then to actually have a conversation with the employer and actually try to find that fit because you've actually met the person. So I think from an employer's perspective, I think quite a few are still using recruiters, particularly for temporary jobs, where you can actually get that post filled and stuff like that. So for example, the civil service for temporary jobs would use a recruitment agency because there's such a big entity that for them to try and go out every time they actually need
Yeah.
to post a few temporaries. So yeah, it's certainly definitely one of the ways to go is through recruitment or through LinkedIn or the likes of NI jobs.
People returning to work or changing careers or whatever, the option is either look yourself or just give your CV to a recruiter and work with that recruiter to give them a definitive outline of what you want.
Yeah, I think that's it. But again, I think someone returning to work, the advice I would be given is, first of all, get your story straight, get the CV. And I think part of this is, and certainly the work I do with Tiny Careers on the women returners is about actually, okay, let's look at your story. So the CV is about actually setting down on paper what your story is, what you've done, how you've done, what skills you've gained, what experience you've gained in that time, what you've done with any time out. Don't lose that period. It could be that you were made redundant. It could be, there are lots of reasons why people take time out, but actually being in a position to say, okay, that's what that is. Then you mentioned about values earlier on. So then it's a case of, right, well, that's where I've been. What do I want moving forward? Because I think one of the things is that for some of us, when we're coming back to work, it's about thinking about what your values are. Now, if you have to pay the mortgage, if you have to put stuff in the fridge, that's going to be your biggest priority at this stage, is maybe getting something to tide you over to get until you get the role that you want. But equally, I think it's an employment relationship, so it cuts both ways. So it's actually about thinking about what do I want? How flexible can I be in work? If you've got children, I might have to do part-time. Remote might be an option, but it's what can I sign up to? What are my red lines? What are my values? What type of work do I enjoy? And it's starting to do that homework before you even start firing out CVs to actually be a bit more, what's the word, selective, I think, about where you're aiming yourself rather than firing a scattergun and hoping one will stick. I always say when I'm working with some of my clients, it's a bit like going on the dating game. Because if you just actually go on to one of these, I've never been on one of them, by the way, married for 26 years, well, married for 20, together for 26, but I believe that apparently how
You're
it goes,
told.
I've been told, I read it somewhere, that on these sites you put up your profile and all of that jazz. And if you just actually say swipe whatever way to everybody, you're going to get some weird and wonderful that is not in line with what you want. Same with jobs. It is a relationship as well. And actually, you're wanting to work with an employer whose values align with yours, that you can see yourself making a difference in. And if you work with, I'm working with a candidate, a client at the minute, who is with an employer whose values are not in line with ours at all. And she is drained, she is stressed, she is burnt out. And she knows, and I know from having the work so far, that actually it's because their values do not line with hers at all. And she took the role, she took the job, she got the promotions, and now she's actually thinking, this is not what I really want in the rest of my career. It's a good job, it's good money, but actually I'm stressed on a Sunday night thinking about going in on a Monday, and it's because actually it doesn't align. So I think, back to your question, I think my first step to anyone coming back into the workplace is to think about what they want and how they want, get their story and their CV together, and then whether it's working with a coach, working with a friend, or getting a mentor, or even using AI to test it out a wee bit first, and then maybe going to a recruiter. But it's getting someone to have a look at your story so far, and actually be in a position where, you know, it's presenting the best you. And actually, that's where sometimes with the CV, that's the first time I'll meet a client, is where they're wanting me to say, well, okay, does this fit right? How do I fix my LinkedIn profile to say what I'm doing? And that maybe initial conversation is really about getting them road ready. And then once they are, it's about actually once they get that interview. For many people, we only do a few interviews in life. As I say, it's a scary position when you don't know what's changed or how it's done and stuff like that. So again, I think having the work on the CV and getting your story right gets you starting to think about not only what you've done, but actually what you want from the future, and start to think about, well, how would I present that?
If I can just touch on the timely careers, Colette. So that's free, isn't it? If I'm correct.
Yes, it's free if you meet the criteria. Yeah, with Time to Careers, if you are female who is wanting to return to work, is on a break at the moment, or if you're also wanting to maybe move to more flexible work, say for example you're caring or you're at that stage in life like myself where actually you're wanting to move away from the sort of grind to something a bit less pressured and you're looking more flexible working, or for some women we're now finding that actually once the children have left the nest, actually you've more time, you've got the skills, you've got the experience, and you want to actually be you again. So I've worked with a lot of women who actually want to get up and get out and do things. So Timely supports all of them. Where it's free is if you're unemployed. If you're
Right.
unemployed, you will get full subsidy, and you get from part of that, what you'll get is access to their platform, you get access to any of their training and development, and you get access to one-to-one coaching with me. If, however, somebody is working and therefore they don't qualify for free one-to-one with me, they can get a subsidised rate through Timely if they are a member of Timely. So the rate is subsidised, it's less than they would get if they come to me direct. As I say, I think from that perspective, I suppose that's part of my value system is I want to be, what's the word, accessible. And
Yeah.
that's why I love the work I do with Timely, because you're in a position where you can really help people who need it at that point. That will help them grow in power as well. So that's very much why I love what I do with Timely and love the fact that actually those people will hopefully then move on to jobs, might well then join women in business, might then support others. And I think that's sort of in line with what I want my legacy to be, that I've really grown others to actually carry the mantle.
And this is in Northern Ireland only, or is this in UK?
Timely Careers is Northern Ireland only. There are
Okay.
other organisations in the UK that do similar stuff, but certainly Timely is part of the 𝗂𝗏𝗍 group, which is Northern Ireland based. So
Okay.
as I say, I do that work for them here.
Oh, you touched on another important point for one of your clients about they don't match, the employer and the employee don't match. And I think it's important in the get-go that we have the confidence to set those boundaries and say,
Absolutely.
this is our non-negotiable. I need to be flexible. I have 3
Yeah,
young kids at home.
absolutely.
And it's
And
knowing how to say that in an interview, because I
it's,
know I would have been, I can't say that there, they're not going to give me the job.
absolutely. And as you say, it's the when, and it's the fear that if I say that, they'll not give me the job. If I say that, because certainly the wage is one thing that people always have an issue about. How
Yeah.
do I bring up money? And then how do I bring up flexibility? And certainly if you're in the early stages of a 3-interview process, I would be recommending you don't jump in there straight with your demands. But I think it's more about actually, certainly when I'm working with women in particular, but men want conversations about how do I ask for the pay rise, how do I ask for, and I think with certainly the flexibility piece in the interview itself, you can certainly ask around what is your policy on flexible working. So really, maybe rather than get it into my specific circumstance, it's actually asking them for what the policy is, and then if you're offered the job, you can then say, right, this is what I need. It's rather than cutting yourself out at that point, it's looking to see, well, okay, if I'm offered it, I've got the question around it. I'm really interested in it, but I need to do this on a 9 to 3 basis or an 8 to 3 basis because I have childcare and responsibilities. How would that work? On the pay as well, again, that's something that actually it's doing your homework. It's doing your homework and being in a position to ask the question around if they say to you, because I've heard this as well, what are you expecting to get here? What do you expect as a starting salary? And it is about being able to say, well, I've benchmarked on a regular or other companies that are related, and I would be expecting that I would be at least on the salary I'm on now, and blah blah blah. So it's doing the homework so that you actually are in a position to say, well, I know the region of this, and I would be expecting that I would be in line with that. But that's the sort of conversations that come up all the time, and it's really being prepared to not only answer the question, but also to be in a place where the right time to actually bring that in. Because at the end of the day, if you don't ask it and you start and then you want it, it's too late.
Well, as an employer interviewing, should we bring the requests up or ask, do you need flexible time early on in the process so we don't get away down and we're going to hire this
Yes,
person and then they turn around and say,
yes.
oh, by the way.
Well, I think, and again, it's the key way to do that is to actually have it clear up front. So as I say, in the adverts, you will see employers saying things like, this is a full-time post, but we are open to, and they actually set it out so that actually they're saying it up front, we're open to other methods of working, etc. So I think a good employer will think about, if it can't be done full time, then what's the reasons for that? If it can be done in a more flexible way, then set that out so that you're actually, because you're ruling out candidates if you don't, that might actually be really suited, but actually their main issue is they've got current responsibilities at the moment. And most of us will have current responsibilities at some point in our lives, whether it's children or parents or whatever. But as I say, I think it's a good thing for employers to be thinking about this and actually looking at how best can I get the right expertise here and skills, even if it means me shifting the pattern a bit to do it. But yeah, I think the earliest the employer can say it, it means that you're getting that open conversation rather than everybody gets to the end of the process and then actually the person's brilliant, you know that they're the best person for the job, but actually you're having then to actually negotiate hard at that point, really, to see can you get them.
You mentioned pay rises as well. Do you offer support for, say, you're in the position, but you want to go for the pay raise conversation? The dreaded pay raise conversation, how to handle that.
I mentioned at the start that I would see myself as the coach, the cheerleader, the challenger, and that's what happens in terms of, and even when you look on my website, how I sort of do my offer for one-to-ones, people usually come to me at the start saying, well, look at the CV, and we do that. But it's the relationship's built then, and I see myself, as far as I'm concerned, what I do is confidential. What I do is basically, if you met me in the street, I would ignore you unless you say, well, wouldn't ignore you, but I wouldn't let on I knew you from being your coach unless you actually want. And so I see myself as a confidant. I see myself as nearly like your HR business partners. I'm your careers business partner until such times as you don't need me. I haven't said that. I've had one person that has got 2 jobs through me. It was a couple of years in one, and then when she saw that her next promotion, she came back to me. So you build that relationship. So with this particular issue, I think once you build a relationship, I have people contact me all over. Oh, I've just gotten a letter. Got one yesterday. I've just gotten a letter. I came first reserve. What should I ask them in terms, because they're going to keep the list open for a year. So people will come to me. It's not just the 1 hour that they have with me, maybe in a session. The way I work with them is, if you've got a question, it's too late to ask me afterwards. So email me, message me. So it is that built in a relationship. So any questions like that, I encourage that they do come to me so that they're coming away from their encounter with me knowing at each stage of the process, I've got a problem here. I'm not sure how to raise the pay. I'm not sure how to raise the hours. I'm not sure how to do it. We actually factor in, let's work on all of those problems before you actually move to the other side.
You've also worked in private and public sector. Is there a big difference in the interview strategies, or is it more or all just the same?
Again, depends on which. Public sector is very much competence-based interviews and using STAR. And although it is going to change, it's going to become more value-based, I think, over time. And certainly they are looking at reviewing all of that. But public sector is very much, tell me about a time. And they've got the competence framework, and there's the evidence requirements. As an interviewee, you're actually looking to think about, how do I best meet those requirements? How do I develop STAR-based examples, situation, task, action, results, structure, so that I can show them what I've done, how I've done it, etc. In the private sector, you may get more values questions and strengths questions. Tell me why you've applied. What do you see as your main strengths? What motivates you at work? And so there's a bit more, variety in some of the private sector jobs. And it can be, sometimes depending again on the sector, can be a bit less formal, because particularly in the early stages where they're having first interviews and want to meet you. The other thing we're seeing now in the public sector in particular at the minute is that there are a number of interviews that are being done where there isn't a panel, that it's all done online. I have coached it's getting up there 10 people who have now been through the interview where they come on like this, there's nobody on the screen, and actually what happens is you get a question comes up on the screen for you to answer. You have a couple of minutes to think about it, and then you give your answer, and there's nobody there doing the
As in a video answer, or do you type your answer?
No, you talk it. The question comes up, you are answering the question as if the panel's sitting there, but there's nobody nodding, there's nobody this. And actually that is
Oh, wow.
then, and that's, so again, I think in answer to your question, competency-based interviews very much used for the public sector and some, yeah, quite a lot of the private sector too. It's your experience, what you've done, how you've done, where you've done it, and actually having a bank of examples that actually demonstrate what you did, how you did it, why you did it, what impact you made, how you made it successful. And it's like anything, with all of them, I think the problem is that a number of people go in, if you haven't done an interview before, or if you haven't done one in a long time, the worst thing you can do is just go in there and hope to wing it and have a conversation. Those days are long over. And the best candidates have done a lot of work and have part now, whether it's with a coach like me, whether it's with friends, with family, whatever, but to be in a position to actually do those kind of interviews where you've got the panel, you've got the areas that they're going to test you on, and if you just go in and get the question and think you're going to answer off the top of your head, you will probably miss the whole point, because they're assessing the evidence of what did you do, why did you do it, and how. That's where you score your points. So the situation is really only the once upon a time. That's the context. It's where you set out here's an example similar to the type of work you want me to do, where I was project manager. And then it's the actions I took. So in this example, I did X, I liaised with whatever, I established a project team, I this, I that, I met with, I knew there was going to be risks associated with, so I established. That's the bit you're getting marked on, the actions and the results. That's where the big scores come. And if you haven't actually prepared that and structured it, and then rehearsed it like an actress or an actor does, then you'll fall into just talking about the situation, talking a bit about what happened without actually having you as the central character in the story. So that for me is really the biggest thing, is that with interviews nowadays, unless it's maybe just something, where there are still wee local shops and wee local whatever that just call someone in a conversation. But if you're going for any employer where there's a proper interview process and there's going to be a panel or you're meeting with a couple, you do need to do the homework. You need to actually understand why I've applied for this, who I am, be able to have the opening pitch and be able to actually answer questions with a structure to ensure that you hit everything they're asking for in your answer without it coming across too rehearsed. You want to come across as being passionate, interested, wanting to be here, not just here because it's one of 20 you've applied for. The employer's making an investment in you as well. So it's that sort of stuff I think is really important, that yes, public sector interviews will be slightly different in their approach. The fact is, no matter what approach it is, you need to be prepared and you need to have your examples ready. You need to have them tailored so that they can see that what you've done is similar to what problem they need solved, so that they take the chance on you rather than anybody else.
So I think you brought up a very interesting point. You need to have your questions prepared. So we have the CV done, you've sent it out, and then you will actually sit down with them, take them through a mock interview. So will you research the company that they've applied to and then tailor their answers and questions? So you would sort of know what type of questions the employer's going to ask, and then you will say, okay, I'm asking you this question. How are you going to respond? And then you work on what they respond.
Oh, yes. So again, depending on the client and what they want. But for some, and again, my pricing is based on the fact that you might just come to see me, you want your CV done, and there you go, and that's that. Similarly, you might come to me just for interview skills, but for others, they will want mock interviews. And for some, the first step will be to do mock light, as I call it. And that involves actually, we've worked on what we think the questions are going to be. We've worked on what their best examples are going to be that might actually address those questions. And they've started to think through the steps they took. And then what we do is, we'll do that usually online. And that allows me to ask them the question, them to do a talk through it. And then after each question to have a conversation where I'll maybe drill in and around them. So why did you do that? And what else did you find? And who was it you were talking to? And biggest problem. So I mightn't be doing it strictly in the way that they would happen. But what I'm trying to do at that stage is pick out the gems to find out what they didn't say and what's underneath what they didn't say. Because actually, sometimes that's when you get someone that really says, oh, I didn't think that was relevant. Now, the thing is, This is another reason why AI has its place. AI can't actually dig like that. AI only gives you back what you ask it.
Yeah.
And so actually, once you get to a certain point, it is digging and brilliant at being nosy and curious skill as
There's why
well.
you're so good at what you do.
That's really where you start to get a sense of, oh, so that was the difficulty. So how did you handle that? And we get more informal at that point, and I let them talk. Generally speaking, we tape that so that they can hear it back. Because the other key thing in an interview is if the first time you hear yourself talk is when you're actually sitting in the interview, it's too late. Far too late. Again, that mock light allows them to hear themselves. I also recommend that people, anyone listening here, one of the easiest way to do this if you're for time and you're doing it on your own is actually once you've got your examples, take them on your phone, walk around the park, listen to how they're said, equally hear how long, what words you're using, how they sound, but also the length of time each answer is, because you'll only have a certain amount of time to get your evidence out. And some people stick so much on the situation and task that they're rushing the actions they took, whenever that should be the biggest part of your answer, is your actions. So it's things that's where I say it's a bit like being an actor or an actress. You do need to rehearse and to make sure you're hitting them with the punches, if you know what I mean, that are going to land best. As I say, I think that's the mock light. For some, then they do want a mock interview, then a full mock interview. And again, I have an office in Belfast that I would do mock interviews from if somebody wants a face-to-face. We do a mix of the online and face-to-face depending on what people actually want. But it's really to get them, what's the word, road ready. That is the biggest thing in terms of confidence, because one of the biggest barriers to getting a job is you don't feel ready, you don't feel confident. Things have changed since I was last doing it and this and that. One of the biggest things I do is, in addition to get like the gems, is to actually work on that confidence. If you know what you want to say and you actually then hear it back and you think, that actually sounds pretty good. That's real, it's not made up. That was what I did and it makes sounds good. It's taken away that bit I was talking about earlier, which is that we undersell ourselves. We're humble for this. By actually working with someone, you get a story that you're actually proud of. And if you don't get this job, you may get the next one, but you've actually got those examples that you can say, do you know something? I'm not making this up. That is me. That's really important as well.
You mentioned you worked with Timely Careers, which is very women-based, and I know you do a lot of work with women in business. You're a mentor there. Do you find it very different than working with men?
Do I find it very different? The interesting part is, I suppose, with men, I do a lot of workshops with women, and I absolutely love the face-to-face training and stuff. I just love up there performing and getting back and delivering. But actually, I find that in terms of the one-to-ones, it's probably about 50-50. Believe it or not, that's probably because men are probably more likely to actually say, right, I need help with this. And I want to do my best at this. I'm going to get someone to help me. And they'll just get straight on the internet, they'll Google, they find me, and away we go. Whereas women will possibly say, you can't do this, I can't do this. Oh, that might cost a lot of money. Oh no, I'm not going to do that. And they'll hold back. A man will say, well, look, actually, if I get this job, I'll be on 5% more than what I was on. They do the maths and they think, well, actually, this would be a good investment for me because actually it'll cost me that to get myself ready. But then if I get this, 5% over the course of the year is going to be a big whack of money. And for the sake of me doing a bit of work beforehand. So they work it out in their heads and think, yeah, I'll invest in getting somebody to help me. Whereas women potentially might not do that. So that's where things like Timely actually help women who actually are not prepared to put themselves first, or feel they can't put themselves first, or don't feel confident enough. That helps that. With men, once you're actually working with them, it's really no different. Because I think for me, the men that I'm working with, they want the role. But generally speaking, once you get talking, there's the same insecurities. There's the same wanting to get. It's the ones who maybe think they are brilliant, probably don't come at all. But anyone that actually comes looking for support, they want to polish, they want to make sure, they want a second opinion. And that might all be what they need. For some, it's more. And I suppose that's why my first session is really just to try and get, how can I best help you? And what I'll normally say for somebody in that position is, let's do one session and then you can tell me if you want more, rather than sign up. And I think that way it means that they see me, I chat to them, they get the sense of how I can help. And then if they want to come back, they do, because they've actually seen me and they know who I am by that stage. So it's a better way. The men that I am working with, it's a mix. I've got a young guy from Scotland, and I've had 3 or 4 recently who've been applying for roles, anything from communications to planning down in Dublin and stuff like that. But they just come in and they think, I've got this, I need to be ready. And they just go looking and Googling. That's how I'm finding them. But yeah, I just love helping them all here, whoever they are and wherever they are.
I think also it's changing in a way, because I know in my case anyway, men are taking the career break and looking after the children. And it's them actually coming back into the workforce as well.
Well, absolutely. I think there's men that are coming in after career breaks. We know there's been redundancies recently, and there will continue to be redundancies. I have been working with the guy who recently was made redundant and is now actually in work. It's a temporary role he's in at the minute, but he's absolutely delighted because he was in the post he was in for years, and this is a chance to him to build his CV. So again, temporary roles are actually a brilliant way of doing that. I always recommend that, to actually start changing your story. If you've been somewhere for years and years, the temporary roles give you an opportunity just to add more breadth to your CV. So he's in at the minute. For me, it is that sense of when you can see people actually growing like that, and redundancy is really bad on the confidence. And arguably, from an employer's perspective, it's not personal. It's, we have to do this and we're following the process, but everybody affected is a person. So there is that disbelief, there is that denial and shock and stuff like that, and then starting to think, well, who's going to want me? How do I do that? So for many men that are coming back into the workplace, whether it's carrying or whether it's not, they're facing the same issues as women, but it's maybe not just as, what's the word, publicised. There's a lot of support for women now. That's one of the things, actually, you mentioned works with corporates. One of the things is around, actually, and I think we need to be looking at, is more of that structured support where an organisation knows that redundancy is coming or redeployment's coming or whatever, that actually they support the workers and actually offer opportunities at that point. In my early career in the job centres, one of my first gigs was 𝗪𝗵𝗆𝗄𝗏 Shorts. We're doing redundancies, and to be fair, they brought in the career service, and that was one of my first jobs as a trainee careers officer, was actually supporting people who had just been told they were being made redundant, and to look at what they could get and how to get their benefits. But actually being in a place where you can give the support to people when they're making the decisions, rather than whenever it's hit them and they're getting their last pay packet, I think is really important.
So then for the whole redundancy area, you would actually come in and help a company decide, okay, what's the best place to handle this? We need to make people redundant. What's the criteria we should decide?
I don't do that bit. No,
right,
I don't do that bit. They will generally bring in a HR specialist to help with that element, that specifically deals in redundancies and the legalities and all of that. Where my role comes in is more of the support and well-being to the people affected. So once they're actually looking at, this is the affected group here, now how do we help them so that they're ready to leave us and go elsewhere? So whether that's their CVs and their interviews, whether that's helping them with job search. So it's actually looking at how you help bridge that gap during the period of notice.
Okay, so that's actually a really good idea, so that if companies, they've no choice to make redundant, that's always a last resort, that they actually give their employees your assistance to go and find another job, instead of just saying, look, we have to make redundant, off you go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not just about the package itself, the monetary package, it's about the support.
It's about being a good employer.
Yeah.
It is actually thinking, whatever reason, whether it's a takeover or administration, whatever, it's actually thinking, how best do we support the people who have been loyal to us to actually build their next chapter? Yes, they'll get monetary compensation, but actually it is the confidence, it's to get them ready. There are employers out there that do it, but I think it's actually something that's, when a company's really hasn't, it's something that I would say that your people, if you are a good people employer, it really is something that actually your reputation will follow you if you're seen to treat those that actually are going to hit hard times with a support package that helps them actually to make the changes and the transition as stress-free as possible. It will always be stressful, but it's about actually thinking about how best you can support people. Yeah.
Yeah, because you never know if you run into those people again and how you can help them.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Again, I think the way I look at it, because I think some people will talk about the fact that he's coming, everything's changing. To me, I think we will see over the next 10 years, that jobs will change, employers will change, certain things will they just disappear, and there may well be redundancies and reskill and stuff like that. So I think actually it's important to actually think about the strategy for that and how do we best actually, if this is the road we're traveling on, actually career support and actually having a face and someone that you can feel you can trust during that. So the careers role, you can see actually becoming more critical because yes, you can look things up, you can do AI, but at that time people are struggling, mental health, confidence, this, that, whatever. So to be in a place where you've got that support available to organisations that are being affected by that change, then they can concentrate on growing and moving their next bit whilst knowing that they're doing right by the people and either reskilling them or actually helping them to move where they need to be next.
Yeah, if you've a huge workforce, you don't know exactly all their talents, and you can come in and
Not
help
at all.
draw out because, as you said, they could be viable in another role.
Absolutely. That's the thing. I think when you listen to the news at the minute, and as I say, I have a wee niece who's just applying for university at the minute, and she's like, you don't know, these jobs are going to still be here by the time I get out of university, and worrying about where she's picking the right choices. So again, I think we are moving into that point where actually having people available that can provide that advice and support and guidance is really important, but also having that, as I say, I am working with a number of people. It's nearly like a retainer that as and when they need support, they come. But it's them knowing that they actually can just say, look, Colette, can we get a coffee? Here's what's happening for me. And sometimes you nearly slip into mentoring role because it's about actually, once you build that relationship, it's about what's best for this person right now and how do I best support them. But I think certainly, I think with employers, and looking at how they might evolve with AI, I do think that actually, yes, you can ask loads about it. It helps me with lots of stuff. It helps lots of businesses with lots of stuff. But that human connection and that empathy and that support and that being able to actually just step back and help a person to see things differently, I think that's something that I can't see AI being able to do anytime soon, but I think people are going to really need it in 1 year.
I know whenever I worked in corporate anyway, you had the assessments of how you think you're doing and where do you see your career going, what are you good at. But as you said, we're also humble. We don't know how to answer them. You know what I mean? I think corporate needs to, in my opinion anyway, they need to come in and have that one person that can draw that out, because the amount of resources that's been lost, because once somebody learns your company and you're letting them go and not find another role, it's such an expense for that knowledge to go.
That whole labour turnover is that actually you're losing the skills, losing experience, losing the knowledge that's up, and you have to start again. There is that, but also having employees that are in fear or feeling I can't do that or not confident. And I always look back on my career and those kind of things that I really made a difference in. And there was one that strikes me from God. It was first time at devolution, and I was working in the civil service, and I was in training and development, and we did long story short, we did a thing for our security guards and front of house reception staff, because what they were doing was reducing the number of government buildings. If you reduce the number of government buildings, you needed less security and messenger staff. I worked with Belfast Met, and was the Association of NI Colleges were involved at the time, and the college system. And we offered those messengers and security guards at the time essential skills, maths and English training, interview skills training, and the ability to apply for an administrative job in the civil service. And that ended up, without sort of blowing my own trumpet, because I'm humble too, our team ended up at the UK Civil Service Awards, and we won. Because actually we made a video and whatnot, and Peter Robinson was the finance minister at the time, and he gave out the awards, and it was really lovely. But those people actually said, there was one woman that was interviewed, and she said, when I started this program, I was so nervous and so shy and so confident. She says, I'm now, not only have I got this, I've got an AO post in the civil service, I'm helping my daughter with her homework, and I want to do more courses. And the difference that you saw in those people, they were empowered, and they suddenly, once they got one step, they grew and they grew. And that's the thing, I think, that if employers can actually say, look, we could be starting a career path here. I also had it when I was in training, and we went through a major transformation and brought in e-learning. And one of the young lads in our office, at the same time, the civil service was doing voluntary redundancies. And he was 40, he was an AO, and he was like, no, I'm going to take the money and I'm going off to Australia. And we got him working on developing some of the learning packages rather than putting it out to a supplier. We trained them up, got him trained to articulate and all the different stuff. He was sitting on the bus doing stuff on YouTube, working out how to do things. He became one of our top developers, flew up the ranks because he suddenly was doing something he was interested in.
You see, that's it.
So just seeing that when you start looking not just what people are doing now, but what they might be capable of, how we can give them that development, how we can help them grow, and how that helps the business. It's just incredible, both for the employer, but also for the individuals, and not just in their jobs, but in their lives. Again, that's my why, is I've seen this in what I've done corporately. Also, I'm seeing it with the people I'm working with now. I'm also seeing that we've got an issue where digital skills, we know we need to get better at digital skills. We know that actually AI skills, digital, cybersecurity, all of those skills are going to be at the forefront. But actually, looking at our population, we need to start actually getting people engaged in that and taking the fear away from it and actually getting people skilled up so that they can do it. So yeah, I think I'm going to be quite busy for a while.
Yeah, the people skills are diminishing because people now come in, and because we're so used to being on the phone and electronics, we don't know how to talk.
No.
Colette, if you can touch on your packages that you offer. So we have the one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we have the workshops.
Yes.
And then we have the corporate.
Yes.
And all this pricing's on your website?
The pricing for all of my individual works on the website. If a corporate company comes to me and we'll only have an initial conversation, I'll write them a proposal based on that initial conversation. For organisations such as social enterprises and whatnot, I do have a rate for them simply because, as I say, they are in the charity sector. So they will all be based on the requirements, and I'll draw up a spec and have a conversation. For individuals, the prices are up there, they're transparent.
Brilliant.
And they set out exactly what I do and how. I suppose what I will do is there's a free first call. So that's usually half an hour. Sometimes they go over, mind you. But there is a free first call. Bottom line is it's in your interest to have the call. If you want something on beyond, that's fine. But that's why I wanted to do it, so that I can find out what they need and I can find out whether I'm best placed to help them or whether they maybe want to look at something else. Equally, at that point, if I find out that actually they're unemployed or they're a women returner, I would actually position them to go to somewhere like Tiny Careers if they can get it free for that. So that's why it's important just to have that conversation. They can sign up for, there's a 1 hour power hour. Can't even say a power hour. And then if they're looking specific packages, the more they use me, the less it costs. So there's a package for CVs and support with that. There's a package for interview coaching. There's an intensive interview coaching one, which is 4 hours. And then there's the top one where they want me to just work with them throughout the whole process. So where it's careers coaching, that's all on there. And my website, I think you're going to put it on anyway, but my name's Colette Leeson. You'll find me, if you Google Colette Leeson, you'll find me anyway, because my website's ColetteLeeson.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Colette Leeson, and I'm on LinkedIn as Colette Leeson. So as long as you remember my name, you'll find me.
Yeah, we'll have a link to your website and all your social profiles on Local Where To as well. So we're definitely going to get you out there. And we'll actually put a link to Colette's pricing as well. If you have one piece of advice for somebody starting out, what would you give?
My first piece of advice, I think, is do something. Nobody's going to knock your door. Nobody's going to come and drag you out and give you a job. So do something. And whether that is reaching out to me for a free one-to-one, or it's looking online and maybe looking at Tiny Careers, or whether it's actually going to your local job centre, do one thing and actually either set out the action point list of what can I do this side of Christmas. That could be even your starting point. What can I do this side of Christmas? Can I get my CV sorted? Can I actually link in with Colette or somebody like her? Can I go to my local job centre or go to my local 𝗂𝗍𝗄𝐿 organisation, the enterprise agencies? So it's do something and actually make the connection, because once you do that, generally speaking, people like to help you. We all do like to help. So if you sit in silence, nobody knows you've got a problem. So ask go out, just be new, be the new girl or boy. I certainly, since setting up my business, I don't know everything and I ask questions all the time. So I think I would say just do one thing, and whether that's reaching out to me or somebody else, but actually get some initial advice, and then that will start you on the road.
Brilliant. And then where do you see your business in the next 5 to 10 years?
My business in the next 5 to 10 years, I definitely feel that in the next 5 to 10 years, I see the business evolving. I'm a traveller, so I will be doing more international work as well as my local work. My key thing is about empowering others. It's about empowering people. I want my business and I want my reputation to be that actually I practice what I preach. And a lot of what I'm doing is growing and pivoting as I go and taking on new projects, because I want people to say, well, look, if Colette at her age can do this, well, I can pivot too. And so I want to inspire people. I want to empower people. And I want to, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, I will be working with organizations, individuals, and colleges actually help build confidence, skills, and the motivation to be able to actually take on the new roles. So I think I want to evolve further. Yeah.
I think it's very important as well. You mentioned that you're traveling, and we all know that you love to travel. So everything's available online now as well. If
Oh,
somebody
yes.
has an interview, or if they
Oh,
have issues,
absolutely.
like you're there
Absolutely.
at the end of Zoom. So
Yes, the thing I do, and I suppose that's worth saying, is I work around the client's needs. If someone has an urgent interview, and I have done mock interviews from Antwerp, I did a mock interview from the Seychelles. If you need me, just the fact that I'm not in the country, that doesn't matter, because I'm actually getting more international clients as well. I've been working with a couple of the American people that are affected by the Trump cuts on the federal employees, so they're reaching out as well.
Oh, wow.
So I think one of the key things is that actually when you're online, you can reach wider audiences, and I will still, and I do love doing the face-to-face stuff, I really do, and just having the buzz in the room, so I'm not going to lose that. But you can get me from anywhere. I do work around evenings and weekends depending on what the client needs from me.
So we can
It's
just
all
fly
of that.
you in then for the one-on-ones to
Oh,
anywhere in the world.
absolutely. We private jets, but no, the key for me is that, particularly when it's the interview-based stuff, if it's more wider career stuff, we can book in a series of sessions. But where it's the interview skill stuff, where someone has a deadline and that's it's fixed, they have to get the experience. Well, then my piece then is to actually look around my calendar and see how I can best help you, no matter where I am.
Brilliant. I think you're also such a role model in a way, Colette, is that you're never too old to start something new. You've said it yourself.
Never too old, and it's never too late.
Just because you retire from one career, you can still do something completely different.
Absolutely. One of the people that I follow a lot is a lady called Anne Flanagan. Some people will know her as Anne from Instagram, and she is a lady who actually was spotted walking past the City Hall last year. A guy from Model Strangers, Chris, stopped her and asked could he take a photograph. And without telling the full story, her name's Anne Flanagan, look her up, or look up Model Strangers. And she's become a model. At 71, wow. She modeling for Junction 1, modeling for Victoria Square. She's been on the One Show, and that came from him stopping her for a photograph. She's done so many things. She's modeling for 𝗏𝗏𝗆 makeup, Paddy McGahern's makeup shop and stuff like that. She's just amazing. But she was a civil servant, and I knew her. And actually, she spoke on one of my training courses 25 years ago, and I managed to get her down to speak to the Timely Careers crew candidates for International Women's Day this year, and it was just amazing. But yes, people like her inspire you. She went viral. She got 41 million hits.
Oh my gosh.
She was on American newspapers. She was here, there, and everywhere, because everyone loves a success story. This was a woman who was shy but successful, and she wasn't that big, confident person. She was humble, that we said at the start, and everybody warmed to that. And we all worry that, oh, well, everybody warmed to her story. Everybody fell in love with her. She is a massive star. And she's going to be, what do you call her? Caroline from Dig Mama. Caroline has literally just interviewed her for a podcast. So you'll see her on that if you don't see her on anything else. But she's amazing. So what I'm saying is, we all need somebody to aspire to. We all need somebody who's a role model or someone that we want to be when we grow up. So I want to be Anne Flanagan. I've told her that I want to be Anne Flanagan when I grow up. If I can inspire others to do some of the things I'm doing, well, then I'll have been a success.
It's brilliant, Colette, to see what you're doing, and amazing how you can look at someone and pull out something that they don't see themselves. And I think we need somebody like that all in our corner, you know.
Absolutely. I think it's
we don't shine enough
critical.
on our own torch.
We become our own worst inner critic whenever we need to be our own inner cheerleader. And if you haven't got that, then get some. I talk about having your own board of directors, having people around you who will lift you. Not just the ones that criticize or whatever. We can do that enough for ourselves. So it's about having people around you that you can. So even if you're not using a coach, certainly it is about actually having people who have your back and actually help you to grow.
Thank you, Colette, for sharing your incredible expertise and passion for helping people find their ideal careers. We will provide links to Colette's business's profile on Localware too. This will give you access to all her social media handles, her pricing, and a direct contact form. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Localware 2's podcast.